The desert in New Mexico is a different kind of empty. It's not the peaceful empty of a quiet room. It's a vast, baking silence that presses in on you. I'd been chewing up miles of I-10 for what felt like forever, hauling a load of consumer electronics from El Paso to Phoenix. The sun was a hammer on the hood of my Peterbilt, and the asphalt shimmered like a black river in the heat. My eyes were glued to the endless gray ribbon of road, the dotted line hypnosis starting to set in. I'd passed a sign for some forgotten town 20 miles back, and since then, there was nothing but scrub brush and red rock. The CB had been silent for an hour, just the occasional crackle of static that made you jump. It was just me, the hum of the tires, and my own tired thoughts. I was running on caffeine and bad decisions, the kind of fatigue that settles deep in your bones. I'd pushed too hard, trying to make up time after a delay at the warehouse, and now I was paying for it. My eyelids felt like sandpaper every time I blinked. I knew I should pull over, but the next decent truck stop was still 60 miles out. The dashboard clock read 3:47 p.m. The light was starting to get that long, lazy quality, stretching the shadows of the cacti into grotesque, dancing giants. It was the most interesting thing I'd seen in hours. I reached for my thermos, shaking it. Empty. Of course it was. Just my luck. That's when I felt a subtle change in the rig's rhythm, a slight loss of power. A knot tightened in my stomach. I glanced down at the fuel gauge, and my heart just dropped. The needle was hovering way below the red line, dancing on the edge of empty. I swore, my voice loud in the cab. I could have sworn I had enough to make it to the next pump. I started scanning the sides of the road, looking for anything, a sign for a gas station, a rest area, even a wide shoulder. Nothing. Just the relentless, unforgiving desert. The engine coughed once, a sickening sound. This was it. I was going to be stranded out here as the sun went down. I started mentally calculating how much water I had, how long I might be stuck. I guided the shuddering truck onto a wide patch of gravel at a crossroads up ahead. It wasn't a proper rest stop, just a place where another lonesome road met the highway and stretched off into nothing. I killed the engine, and the silence that fell was absolute and heavy. I was truly, utterly alone. I put my head in my hands, the weight of the situation crushing down on me. This was a trucker's nightmare. I got out of the cab, the heat hitting me like a physical wall. The air was so dry it felt like it was sucking the moisture right out of my lungs. I kicked the dusty tire in frustration, a cloud of red dust puffing up around my boot. I pulled out my cell phone. No service, not a single bar. The panic started as a cold trickle in my gut. I looked around. This crossroads was the middle of nowhere. One road was the highway I'd been on. The other was a smaller, older two-lane blacktop that looked like it hadn't been resurfaced since the 50s. There were no signs, no markers. It was as if the place didn't officially exist. The only sound was the click-click-click of the engine as it cooled down. I popped the hood, more out of a sense of duty than any real hope. I'm a decent mechanic, but you can't fix an empty tank. I stared at the engine block, feeling helpless. The sun was lower now, and my own shadow stretched long and thin across the gravel, a dark companion to my misery. I figured I'd have to start walking soon, but which way? Both directions looked equally hopeless. That's when I saw him. A figure was walking up the old two-lane road toward the crossroads. At first, I thought it was a trick of the heat haze, a mirage, but he kept getting closer. He was tall and thin, dressed in a black suit that looked impossibly clean and crisp for this environment. No sweat stains, no dust on his polished shoes. It was wrong, deeply wrong. My instinct screamed at me. You don't see a man in a full suit walking through the high desert in the afternoon. You just don't. I took a step back, my hand instinctively going to the tire thumper I kept in the cab. He walked with a smooth, unnerving grace, not a single wasted movement. He didn't look tired or hot. He just looked purposeful. He stopped about 10 feet from me, a polite smile on his face. It didn't reach his eyes. They were dark and seemed to absorb the light around them. Having some trouble? He asked. His voice was calm, mellifluous, the kind of voice you'd trust to sell you anything. It made the hairs on my arm stand up. I'm out of gas, I managed to say, my own voice sounding rough and coarse compared to his. He nodded slowly, as if this was the most expected news in the world. A common predicament at this particular junction. He gestured vaguely at the crossroads. It seems to have an appetite for poor planning. He took a step closer, and I noticed he didn't cast a shadow. The low sun was at his back, and there was nothing at his feet but sun-baked gravel. I tried not to stare at the space where his shadow should have been. Maybe it was the angle, the heat, my exhaustion. I had to be seeing things. My mind was scrambling for a logical explanation, but it kept coming up empty. "I can help you with your problem," the man said, his hands clasped neatly in front of him. "A full tank of diesel, not just enough to get you to the next station. A full, sloshing, complete tank." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Yeah. You got a secret gas station in your pocket. Look, pal, I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not in the mood." "I'm not selling anything," he said, his smile unwavering. "It's a transaction. A simple one. In exchange for the fuel, I can also guarantee your rig will run like it just rolled off the factory floor for the next year. No breakdowns, no costly repairs. The engine will purr." He was speaking my language now, tapping directly into every trucker's deepest desires: reliability and no repair bills. It was too specific, too perfect. The fear was still there, but it was being overshadowed by a creeping, desperate curiosity. "And that's not all," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your route will be clear. Every light will be green. Every scale house will be closed. Every patch of traffic will part for you. You will make every delivery, every single one, ahead of schedule. You will be the most efficient driver on the road." I just stared at him. He was describing a fantasy, a dream. It was everything I needed to dig myself out of the financial hole I was in, to get my life back on track. It sounded too good to be true, and my daddy didn't raise no fool. "And what," I asked, my throat dry, "would you want for all that, my soul?" He let out a soft, genuine laugh. It was a surprisingly normal sound, which made it all the more terrifying. "Goodness, no. Nothing so dramatic. Nothing you will even miss." He paused, letting the silence hang between us. "I just want your shadow." I blinked. "My what?" "Your shadow," he repeated, as if asking for a spare cigarette. "The silhouette you cast in the light, that's all. You give it to me, and I give you a full tank, a perfect truck, and an open road. Forever." I looked down at my own shadow, stretched out long and lean beside me. It was just a patch of darkness. It had no use. The man was clearly insane, but he was offering me a way out. And what he was asking for was nothing, wasn't it? The rational part of my brain was screaming that this was a trick, that I was dealing with something I couldn't understand. But the desperate, tired, pragmatic part was already weighing the cost. A shadow, for a lifetime of easy driving. It was the easiest choice and the hardest one I'd ever faced. "How?" I finally asked, the word barely a whisper. The man's polite smile widened just a fraction. "A simple handshake will suffice. We have an accord, and the terms are fulfilled." A handshake. It seemed so normal, so mundane for something so profoundly weird. I looked from his outstretched hand pale and clean back to my own shadow. I thought about walking for miles in the burning sun, the cost of a tow, the lost load, the angry dispatcher. I thought about the grinding stress of every trip, the constant worrying over the next breakdown. This was a way out, a clean, simple way out. Who needed a shadow? What did it even do? It was just an absence of light. It wasn't a thing you could hold or sell. It was nothing. He was offering me everything for nothing. I made my decision. "Okay," I said, the word feeling heavy and final. "You got a deal." I reached out and took his hand. His grip was cool and dry, like polished stone. There was no shock, no flash of light, no dramatic change. He simply shook my hand, his dark eyes holding mine. For a split second, I felt a strange, pulling sensation, not on my body, but on my self. It was like a gentle tug on my very essence, a subtle unraveling. It was over in an instant. He released my hand. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said. He then turned and began walking back down the old two-lane road from whence he came. He didn't look back. I stood there, feeling foolish. Had I just hallucinated the whole thing? The heat, the exhaustion, it was possible. I shook my head and turned to look at my truck. Then I saw it. The fuel gauge, visible through the windshield. The needle was pinned firmly on F, full. A cold shiver, completely unrelated to the desert heat, ran down my spine. It was real. It had all been real. I scrambled back into the cab, my heart pounding. I turned the key. The engine didn't just start. It roared to life with a smooth, powerful thrum I hadn't heard since the day I bought her. It sounded brand new. I sat there for a full minute, just listening to the engine purr. The check engine light, a constant, nagging orange companion for the past 6 months, was gone. The air conditioning blew colder, the radio sounded clearer. It was like someone had taken my old, beat-up rig and replaced it with a perfect replica. Tentatively, I pulled back onto the highway. I drove for 10 miles, then 20. The truck handled like a dream. Every bump felt softer, the steering was tighter. It was unbelievable. Then I saw the first traffic light in a small, dusty town up ahead. It was red. I started to slow down, but 100 yards out, it flicked to green. I coasted through. The next town was the same. Green light, and the next. I passed a way station. The open sign was dark, the gates were down. I blew past it at highway speed, a grin spreading across my face. This was it. The deal was real. I had won. I had beaten the system. For the next few hours, I was a king of the road. Nothing could stop me. The miles melted away. I made the delivery in Phoenix a full 8 hours early. The receiver was shocked. My dispatcher called, his voice full of disbelief and praise. I just told him I'd caught all the green lights. I felt invincible. The strange man, the crossroads, the handshake, it all started to feel like a distant, bizarre dream. A lucky break. I had what I wanted. I didn't think about the price. Why would I? I had given up nothing. It was the next afternoon, after a good night's sleep and a hot shower, that I noticed it. I was walking from my motel room to the truck, the Arizona sun blazing directly overhead. I dropped my keys and bent over to pick them up. That's when I saw it. More precisely, I didn't see it. There was no dark shape of my body on the pavement beneath me, nothing. The concrete was uniformly bright, washed in harsh sunlight. I froze, bent over in that awkward position. I straightened up slowly and looked down at my feet. There was no shadow. A jolt of pure, undiluted terror shot through me. I waved my arms. I jumped. Nothing. The space around me was devoid of any darkness. It was as if the light refused to be interrupted by my presence. I felt a profound and terrifying invisibility, even though I could see my own hands and body perfectly well. I ran to the truck, fumbling with the lock, and scrambled inside, locking the doors. I sat in the driver's seat, breathing heavily. I held my hand up in front of the windshield. No shadow fell on the dashboard. It was gone. He had really taken it. The blessing of the open road suddenly felt like a curse. The perfect ride felt like a hearse. I was driving a constant reminder of my deal with something. And natural, I started to notice other things. The world felt subtly brighter, harsher. Lights seemed to glare more. The sun felt more intense on my skin, as if without my shadow to protect me, I was completely exposed. And then I saw the others. On my next run, heading east on I-40, I started looking. And I saw them. Other big rigs, gleaming in the sun. And when they passed by, or when I pulled up next to them at a stoplight that magically turned green for us, I looked. I looked at the pavement beside their tires. Nothing. No shadow. They were just like me. A fleet of the blessed and the damned, crisscrossing America, paying for our perfect runs with a piece of our souls we never knew we needed. That was 2 years ago. I still drive. The truck still runs perfectly. Every light is still green. I'm the most reliable driver in the company. I've paid off my debts. By all accounts, I should be happy, but I'm not. I'm a ghost in plain sight. The world has lost its depth. Without a shadow, everything feels flat, two-dimensional. I avoid walking in the sun now. I park in garages. I stick to the shadows cast by buildings and other people. I feel like a vampire, but without the cool parts, just the emptiness. I sometimes drive back to that crossroads in New Mexico. I never get out of the truck. I just sit there, with my full tank and my silent engine, and I watch that old two-lane blacktop. I've seen him a few times. The man in black. Sometimes he's just standing there. Sometimes he's talking to another stranded driver. I see the desperate hope on their face, the same calculation I once made. I want to roll down my window and scream, "Don't do it. It's not worth it," but I never do. Because what would I say? That he's taking your shadow? They'd think I was crazy. And maybe they have to learn the cost for themselves. Maybe the deal only works if you believe you're getting something for nothing. So I just drive away. I put the pedal down and my silent, shadowless truck eats up the miles on the empty, open road. It's a perfect, never-ending journey. But it feels less like freedom and more like a sentence. I sold a piece of myself I can never get back, and all I got was a smooth ride into a brighter, harsher, and infinitely lonelier world.